So I had this talk planned for October 30th, and it would have been time appropriate, but something happened, and I'm still going to give it. So you get to hear this, Venerable, again. As part of the celebration of Venerable's 40th anniversary, 40 years as a monastic, we had a huge celebration here, and part of it involved inviting people to send in their memories and stories about how meeting with Venerable children impacted their lives and their practice. And of course, I can't read all of the letters today, but there's two that really stand out, and there's lessons for us in each of these letters. So the first letter is from someone by the name of Bob Hakim. Well, you'll see why there's a lesson here, Venerable children. You see, if you're not going to give the BBC, you have to put up with this. But there's some very important lessons here. So he writes this. It's titled A High School Story. It is a treasure to be able to say that Venerable Thupten Chodron has been my friend since age 8. We went to the same middle school, high school, and synagogue. Chodron, we called her by her other name. Another name then ran into some of the same problems in high school as she found in Sunday school. Problems which ultimately found their solutions in the Dharma. In reply to her questions, the answers were too often, well, because I said so, or because it's in the book. And this did not cut it with Venerable Chodron. She was looking to know what gives. In one HS civics class, what does HS stand for? High school. We don't do that in Canada. The teacher would not tolerate a student more intelligent than he. One day he kicked children out of his class for the duration of the semester. For the rest of that semester, Venerable Chodron reported to the principal's office for that hour each day, and as I remember it, she was told to make herself at home, which I'm sure she did. Knowing Venerable Chodron as I did in those high school days, it is easy to see how she got from there to here. She hasn't changed. Well, she has. Some things haven't. In joyful celebration of these 40 years with Metta, Robert Hakim. So there's a number of things that come to mind with this letter, and the first one is thanks to Jazz. So Jazz's insight with that letter was, one should go to one's prom because your classmates may become spiritual teachers. Who knows? We should go to our prom. And actually, when we got the letter originally from Bob, Venerable Damcho and I schemed that we should just write him because we were looking for a tune to put words to. So we wrote to Bob and said, you know, Venerable Chodron ordained in 1977, and after that, the tape broke for her knowing melodies. So what would you suggest? And he wrote back and he said, Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. And we thought, that's going to be really too hard. So we didn't use that one. So then, you know, if you're an introvert like I am, I was often looking at the mouthy kids in my class as kind of show-offs and brats. And so the lesson for me is, you know, don't judge other people who are always asking questions. You know, this could go on to something great. And then for teachers, you know, have the humility to recognize that some of your students will be smarter than you are, and that you could learn from this experience. And so how wonderful it is that there are people in our lives that we do maintain some connection with throughout the years, and we can rejoice in the paths that we take over time. So that was that. There's more things, but I won't do it now. Then the second letter that I just absolutely loved, I'm going to give you some history about this, first of all. And it goes back to 1998, and my first time hearing the Dharma, really. And I dove into a 10-day retreat at Cloud Mountain. And I was there with my buddy, Barbara McDaniel, a.k.a. Venerable Chinny. So it was a silent retreat. I had no clue what was going on. It was actually green Tara. And as a former Catholic, I had a little bit of problem with why Tara was green, but I thought, you know, okay, so she's green. People can do what they want. And I was absolutely restless, and Kevin was sitting in front of me. I didn't know it was Kevin at the time, but this very kind person was sitting right in front of me, and I was just flipping pages and making a total noise the whole time, but I really liked what I was hearing. And about 2 days into the retreat, this person arrived late. And so the person came in, and Venerable Children was actually in the midst of teaching. She stopped the teaching to say, "Hi there, Bobby, sweetheart." And my head snapped around, and I thought, Bobby, sweetheart? This is a nun? Bobby, what do you do to get called sweetheart here? And so I kept, out of my peripheral vision, I was just wanting to see, is anyone else sort of freaking out? Bobby, sweetheart? No one else has been called sweetheart yet. And so for the rest of the 8 days that were left, I kept wondering, how do you get in the category of sweetheart? He was the only one who got sweetheart. And then I found out later on that his actual name is Bob Wilson, and that he called himself Bobby Sweetheart at some point as part of his own progression in life. And anyway, he's an absolute gem, a gem of a person. He is a sweetheart, and he deserves to be called sweetheart, and the rest of us don't. So this is what he wrote. Oh, by the way, this BBC talk is an antidote to the news today, in case you're wondering. Just, it's lighter. And he titles his letter, Venerable Tupten Children, Bringing Peace to a Chaotic World. It is with joy and delight that I acknowledge 40 years of magnificent Dharma that Venerable has blessed all of us with. I encountered Venerable's teachings at Cloud Mountain when I found her book Open Heart, Clear Mind in 1995. At that time, my mind was still a mess, and I cried out to life. I said, "Help! I can't take it anymore. I need an explanation of why there is such suffering in me and in the world that I can't fix." So I signed up for the Lam Rim retreat, a gradual path from confusion to enlightenment. Oh my, it was the answer to my prayers. I loved it. At the completion of the retreat, we were asked what we got out of it. I broke down and sobbed because of the profound value to me and the answers that the Dharma gave to me. It was a path out of hell into freedom. That was the start of many additional retreats that I attended. Many retreats ended with Dharma skits. I have attached a picture of Venerable with Mickey Mouse ears that she wore from one of the skits. This is the picture of my teacher that I still have on my altar. Priceless anecdote. At Cloud Mountain during morning break, I was walking up the road when Venerable came out onto the same road. As we got closer, I smiled towards her, and she jumped high in the air, and we both said, "Whee!" And we laughed. It was so much fun, and it showed how playful Venerable's spirit is. Lastly, on the week that Venerable was buying Sravasti Abbey, she was also leading a retreat at Cloud Mountain. Venerable was so human, so candid to admit that her mind was immensely distracted and overwhelmed with details of radon, mitigation, escrow, computers in multiple locations, and all the while she was leading a retreat. Her honest descriptions were so humorous and fun. The world is blessed by having the flame of the Dharma warming the hearts and spirits of countless beings for the last 40 years, and I trust for the next 40 years too, with immense appreciation and delight, Bobby Sweetheart. So the other thing that I learned from having this experience of hearing about Bobby Sweetheart on that retreat is I could have easily decided during that retreat that this was just far too weird. Like, why does somebody get called Bobby Sweetheart? And then another thing that happened at the retreat was there was going to be walking meditation each day. As a former teacher, I expected we all showed up at this place for walking meditation, and then everyone sort of dispersed. And I was sitting there outside the meditation hall thinking, now what? Like, is someone going to come and get me and take me on walking meditation? And so I sat there for the whole time, and I thought, I guess this is sitting meditation. So thankfully, I didn't get too freaked out with Bobby Sweetheart and the whole thing of a nun calling someone in a very familiar way, something I thought was a term of endearment. And I survived the walking meditation. And the future days, I did walk by myself. I figured that one out. But to not come to conclusions too quickly and decide to bail. That's a very important lesson. And if things are really weird, then of course, talk to people. Get the scoop on what's going on. But I love Bobby Sweetheart's ending. You get to hear it a third time now, Venerable Children. The world is blessed by having the flame of Dharma warming the hearts and spirits of countless beings for the last 40 years, and for the next 40 years, too.
Okay, so there's a story how he became Bobby's sweetheart. When he came to that first retreat, even before the retreat started, we bumped into each other, and he started telling me his whole life story and how in middle school he weighed 300 pounds, and he just had horrible self-esteem and was really a mess. And then he decided at some point, I think he must have been an adult, to lose the weight, and he lost it, and he's a normal weight now. But he realized that to lose the weight, he had to change his whole feeling about himself and get free of the self-hatred. Yeah. And so he said he started loving himself, and this is how he did it. He would give himself a hug every day and go, "Bobby, sweetheart, Bobby, sweetheart."
Could you come up here and do that?
You, Bobby. So that's how he became Bobby's sweetheart. I don't know exactly but how it is, but his partner is called Johnny Honey Bunny. Yeah, so you have Bobby Sweetheart and Johnny Honey Bunny living happily ever after.